And you want shame to be placed at that level. That is cruel. That is cruel, people. Come on. Maybe there's a transgender child who wants to be comfortable in the place they want to pee or poo. You ever think about that? Think about every single kid who goes to school usually is going to pee or poo at some point. Do you want that child to be comfortable? Or do you want that child to not express themselves even in the most basic human function we could do? Hello, hello, and thank you for tuning in. It's Brandi's World. Okay, today we are going to take a look at a podcast that is basically targeting transgender children. So this is our second review at a podcast series from a guy named Brandon Showalter. Now, Brandon Showalter is a journalist at the Christian Post. If that maybe speaks volumes right there. And the podcast is named Generation Indoctrination, the Transgender Battle, from the Christian Post. And the episode that we will be looking at today is the second half of the episode titled Premiere. Gender Chaos in America. Have schools become, quote, indoctrination centers for gender ideology, unquote? Whew, that's quite the title. So, a little recap on the first half of this premiere episode. They did an interview with a lady named January Littlejohn. And January Littlejohn lives in Florida. And January Littlejohn informed us, through her own words, out of her mouth, that her child has informed them and their husband that they are either trans or not comfortable using the name and pronouns that were assigned to them by Mrs. Littlejohn and her husband, apparently. So Mrs. Littlejohn was having none of that. And when the school was using the pronouns and name that the child, who happens to be 13 years old, says, I feel more comfortable using this name and these pronouns. And the school is like, cool, we're going to support you. In fact, here at school, you can even find peer groups. So that's what that child did. That child was in a peer group. That child was asking the school to use the pronouns they feel comfortable with and the name they feel comfortable with. And Mrs. Littlejohn was having none of that. So she was highly pissed at the school. And that's what the interview was about. The interview was about how pissed this woman was at a school because the school was accommodating the student in the student's preferred pronouns and preferred name. So that's what we're looking at. And I believe we're moving on from Mrs. Littlejohn. And, well, we're going to continue on the second half of this episode. We'll see if we can get all the way through this premiere episode. Okay, here we go.
Not an isolated one. Parents around the country are now finding themselves locked in contentious battles with individual schools and district officials as they navigate this gender crisis. Tiffany Justice, who served as a school board member from 2016 to 2020 in Indian River County, Florida, was so troubled by what she saw happening that she co-founded a group called Moms for Liberty to defend parental rights across America.
We deal with moms almost every day whose children are either captured in some way by gender identity indoctrination or gender dysphoria, or also schools that are intervening in really inappropriate ways with children out.
Whoa, she came out swinging right away. So this is Tiffany Johnson, who started an organization to protect parents from, I'm not 100% sure what they're protecting the parents from. Apparently, from the school doing things that the school has policies to do. I don't know. I guess we're going to find out a little bit more. But did you notice in that language, they talked about gender indoctrination, but they also said gender dysphoria. And I'm really curious what Tiffany Johnson's definition of gender dysphoria is, because I don't think they're going to be using it in proper way that it should be applied. So if you're not too familiar with what is gender dysphoria, let's real quick. Gender dysphoria is when your gender identity and your gender expression are not aligned with each other. So when you close your eyes and look at yourself and think about that inner self and go, you know what, I want to express that inner self. And here's the image I see on the inner self. And I open my eyes and I go to express that to the mirror, the society, myself. And I'm looking and I'm going, wow, that's a different image than what I have in my head. And it's can be very painful to have that mismatch between your identity and your expression. So that weighs the dysphoria. Believe me, I used to experience a lot of heavy dysphoria until I've gotten a lot of treatments that have helped. I'm not free of dysphoria, but I rarely experience dysphoria in most activities of my daily life. I look in the mirror. I don't really have a mismatch. I mean, of course, I don't look exactly how I want to look in my head. I don't think anyone does. But I'm not far off from the image I have of me, my inner identity, and my expression. I'm not too far away, so I have very ease of gender dysphoria. It's not that rough on me in most cases. Not always the case when I first started transitioning. Oh my God, was gender dysphoria crippling. I literally, before I've had facial feminization surgeries, I could not leave my bedroom. I just couldn't do it without caking makeup all over my face to try to make it somewhat feminine, to try to pull that image out from within me. And I would spend 2 hours sometimes putting on makeup just before I can leave my room. Couldn't even face my roommates or my friends without having caked on, because I couldn't even face myself with that mismatch of identity and expression. That's the dysphoria. And it's treatable. You can treat it through the expression being augmented and formed to more closely align with the identity from within. And that's really good treatment. The treatments I have gotten for gender dysphoria, they work. The laser hair removal, it works. That lightens the mismatch, the differential between my identity and my expression. Hormone replacement therapy, the biggest one to treat that dysphoria. Oh my goodness. I'm going to have a whole episode of just hormones. I'm probably have multiple episodes of just hormone replacement therapy. It's a wonderful, wonderful treatment. A very powerful treatment. It works. Facial feminization, for me, works. I'm an adult. I can have these surgeries. Children don't get these surgeries. When a child is experiencing gender dysphoria and they are transitioning their expression to more closely align their identity, if they're under 18, most likely about the only treatments they're going to get is social treatments. And that helps. Believe me, social treatments are hugely important. Yes, social treating dysphoria. That means socially you use the name you're comfortable with, that more aligns with your identity. You use the pronouns that more align with your identity. You dress that more aligns with your identity. So those expressions, all social expressions, those are very helpful in treating gender dysphoria. And a child, if they have not experienced a puberty yet, maybe they're young enough to slow down or stop that unwanted puberty that they may or about to experience. You can slow that down and stop that, and then a little bit later, when they're a little bit older, they may want to go through a hormone replacement therapy and experience a puberty that they would be more comfortable having with their body, with their identity. So blocking or slowing down a puberty and social change, that's all a child under 18 is going to get for treatment. And that treatment requires family. It requires friends. Very little of it is going to require doctors, because there's not going to be any surgery on there. You see a doctor. The doctor recognizes that you have an affliction that can be treated. As the parent even said, they recognize gender dysphoria. And there is good treatments for gender dysphoria, and that doctor would be like, okay, well, maybe we're going to block these puberties, or maybe they've already begun that puberty and maybe they want to slow it. Maybe they're just going to back off of it. I don't know. That's going to be between the doctors and the patients. And since the patient's under 18, it would be with the legal guardians of the patients. Just like any other child, all these decisions are going to be made by professionals, and including the parents. But the social media, you don't even need a doctor for that. I mean, it'd be nice to have a doctor on your team and going, we're going to do these future things. But as a family, as a friend, you can help that child with social adjustment to their inner identity of expression. Not that hard. But we're going to see what Tiffany Johnson has to say about gender dysphoria.
We deal with moms almost every day whose children are either captured in some way by gender identity indoctrination or gender dysphoria, or also schools that are intervening in really inappropriate ways with children outside of the consent and knowledge of parents. And so that's been our experience, just very concerned parents about the future of their children, and some very, very confused children.
Clinton Aaron Thomas are
very, very confused children. Have you met a child that's not confused? Do you know children who just got everything figured out? Badoosh. No worries. Yeah, there's going to be confusion, and the very, very confused might be because they have parents who don't understand. If the parents are confused and the parents don't understand what the child is going through, it can be confusing for all parties involved. And that's well, we need some education, people. We need general education for people to say, hey, people who are transgender exist, and they're among us, and they are us, and they're human, and they're people, and they're children, and they're adults, and they're at every stage of life, at every place of life. There are no boundaries that say here are trans children, here are not trans children. Here's the boundary between trans adult and no trans adults. Every single trans person was a child. Think on that. Okay, so we're going to hear from a couple of parents who think their child is confused. And let's see, maybe they're confused. Maybe everyone's confused. Let's find out.
Two such parents who have faced pushback for speaking out after their daughters became uncomfortable with the ways in which gender identity indoctrination was rolled out in Loudoun County, Virginia. In the lead up to the 2021 election cycle, this Washington, D.C. area exurb county in Northern Virginia became an epicenter of the debate over gender ideology in the schools.
I would say that it was really the first day of this past school year, when we heard from our daughters who came home that first day that they had been asked openly in class and through different surveys in class that day from different teachers that they were asked to declare their pronouns.
Together with his...
They were asked to declare their pronouns. Oh, so that means they're in a class in the 21st century, I think. Okay, so these parents, they send their children the first day of school, and the teacher's asking them, hey, class, Day 1, what's your name and what are your pronouns? This does not sound like a bad thing to do. I think this is a good thing. I went to college late in life. I graduated in 2018 from college, so every class I went to, we had that question. At the beginning of class, can you tell us your name and pronouns? That's pretty great. They didn't do it just because I was in the class as a trans person. They do it in all the classes. That's how the kids express themselves. Hey, this is my name and this is my pronoun. Why is that scary? Goodness, people.
Wife Erin, they called the school principal to complain and explained that this sort of thing wouldn't be acceptable. But having the students declare their pronouns was only the start of the family's concern. As Loudoun County Public School Board officials approved and adopted Policy 8040 last year. This policy set forth new rules requiring teachers to use students' self-selected pronouns and to allow students who identified as the opposite sex to use the restroom of their
Ooh. There's some loaded language there. The opposite sex. No one was talking about sex. In fact, your whole podcast doesn't have anything to do with sex. It is Generation Indoctrination, the transgender. Gender is the key word here because we're talking about gender, not sex. So a school put in a policy, and the policy says, hey, teachers, don't be an jerk to your students. If your student is expressing who they are, and that expression includes a name that may not be their assigned name at birth, and it may have pronouns that are not the pronouns assigned to them at birth, guess what? Respect the student and let that student express themselves. We're making a policy. How does that sound, teachers? And teachers are like, yeah, cool. Right? Unless you're a jerk of a teacher and you're like, F no, I don't care if that child expresses themselves. I'm here to bash them back down to where they belong, in a little box. And don't try to escape that box, little child, little student. What kind of teachers? You want to send your children to a school that has teachers that are not going to allow the students to express themselves? No, this is great. The school has a policy, and the policy says if the student expresses a name and a pronoun, guess what? You're going to use that name and pronoun because we respect the children who are students here at our school. Yay! This is not a controversial, hard policy. It should be standard. It should be standard across all schools. Everywhere. Right? Where do you want children not to express themselves? Unless you predetermine if a child expresses themselves in manner X, then they are an awful human. And I think that's what's going on here. You've already poisoned the well. Anyone who wants to identify in this well of non-cis or trans or non-binary, that well is completely poisoned. And guess what? Shame and guilt is going to be placed onto you if you go into that well. It kind of sounds like that's what's happening here.
Choice.
We noticed that our girls were coming home saying they were concerned about using a bathroom now because now you have boys that may come into those girls' restrooms
No, that policy does not say anything about boys going into girls' restrooms. That's silly. That is you placing a label on a student you don't know. Just because you see a student go into a restroom does not mean that you decide what label that student should be wearing before they go into that restroom. That student decides what label they wear or don't wear. And if that student says this label of me is not the one assigned to me, policy is there to accept that. And how dare you as a parent dump all over that policy for allowing children to express who they are. Goodness. So, 2 children going to school. concerned about a bathroom. And then the parent goes in, there might be boys going into the girls' restroom. Oh, scary. Maybe there's a transgender child who wants to be comfortable in the place they want to pee or poo. You ever think about that? You think about every single kid who goes to school usually is going to pee or poo at some point. Do you want that child to be comfortable? Or do you want that child to not express themselves even in the most basic human function we could do? As mammals, we poo and pee. Every mammal does it, right? And you want shame to be placed at that level. That is cruel. That is cruel, people. Come on.
Just decided to hold it for the day. Or I would ask, how come your water bottle's still full? And they said, we just decided not to drink anything today.
So you call the principal on the first day after your daughters are forced to declare their pronouns. What was it like then slowly waking up to realize that this had infested and infected everything? And how was it interfacing with school officials, bureaucrats, board members, anybody who's in charge?
Our calls at first were well received. It was met by school administration, the principal in particular, as thank you for sharing your concerns. I'm going to be dealing with this. I'll discuss it with my staff. And we don't really hear after that what happened. But then...
Yeah, guess what? He did discuss it. They've been discussing it for a while, and they came up with a policy. That's where policies come from. They come from discussions. So the school administrators, because they have a policy, leads us down the road to going, they had discussions. Yes, they did. And they decided that they're going to support the expression of their children, of their students. So yeah, so I can imagine you're a school administrator and you're going, oh my God, we already have this policy. And I got another phone call from a parent. Oh, yeah. Bathrooms are scary. Oh, yeah. Your kid may see someone walk in that bathroom who doesn't have the same assignment as them. Wow. That's scary. And how? In which way is that scary? I'm sorry, that's what I'd be like. I'd be like, how is that scary? Come on, there are stalls on the bathroom. They're concerned because they say that they have girls. We're going to go with their definition. Girls. Maybe they have children. But those girls are obviously going to choose the girls' bathroom because we still have it binary in our school systems. Most of them are binary bathrooms. So you choose one or the other. And they're going to be going into the girls' bathroom. And they're scared that there might be a boy going in there because there's a policy that allows transgender children to be comfortable when they go in the bathroom. But guess what? If a boy wants to go into that bathroom, that policy does not affect them either way. The boy is the key point there. A transgender child who was assigned box A at birth and identify as box B, they don't identify as the box that you're trying to put them in. That's the point of the transgender part. Get it? So if someone is a cis boy decides to go into that bathroom, they are doing something that probably shouldn't be okay. Because why? Why would a boy go in there to pee or poo? Do they feel more comfortable? Maybe that's the case. They then go all genders, because a boy going into the bathroom, a girl going into the bathroom. If they all have stalls, what difference does it make, people? I have been in women's bathrooms, in public bathrooms for more than 8 years now. You know how many vaginas I have seen? Absolutely none. Zero. You don't see private parts in there. You don't intrude on people in the bathroom. You do your business in the bathroom and you get out. Oh my goodness, people, this is not hard. But I agree with you. I don't want boys going into places assigned specifically for girls. If we're going to use that binary, I agree with you. The policy also says that boys shouldn't go into girls' bathroom. It still has that rule. It still has that law. But there are people who don't use that label boy. There are students who are not going to use that label boy that you want to place on them. And that is the issue. You're placing that label boy onto that student wanting to use the restroom of their choice. Or maybe you're choosing to put a label girl on a student who identifies in the other box. Either way, why are you dictating children labels to them? You're telling a child, you can't think for yourself and you can't express yourself because I have a label that's already predetermined, and you better follow all of the characteristics that come along with that label. And do all of the things and behave the way that that label states you should behave. Well, guess what? Those children who are trans say, that label is not me. So, yeah, it still stands. I don't use the boy label. Am I supposed to use a boy's bathroom because once upon a time I was assigned boy? That is silly. I'm a woman. I use the women's restroom. Hence, transgender woman. Oh goodness, the bathroom issue is getting old, people. It's ridiculous. Transgender people are not threats in bathrooms. Transgender people are threatened in the bathrooms. That's what's going on. Okay?
It slowly became obvious that they didn't really care what we thought. Emails weren't returned, FOIAs were denied.
Giving you the brush off?
They thought.
Brush off.
They wrote a policy about it.
Well, sorry, this is very important for the health and welfare of all of our students. And it never was implied, or I was never called a bigot or a racist myself, but it was sort of implied like, don't worry, we're trying to protect all students here. And it was just basically...
Yes, the school's like, we're trying to protect all students. You want us to be biased and bigoted towards certain students. Can you imagine the goal of that parent? That parent's like, yeah, so then I told those school administrators that I don't want my children involved with any of those children, because if you have those children at that school, my children aren't going to be anywhere near them. If they're not even going to the bathroom, my children aren't going to drink at the same fountain as those kids. My children aren't going to do any of those things those children are doing. And if those children are allowed to do things around my children, I'm going to be pissed and I'm going to keep calling you. And the school administrator's like, yeah, my boss told me not to call you a bigot. And so I guess I won't call you a bigot, but bigots do bigoted things, so bigot on out of here. My goodness, that guy was like, well, they didn't call us a bigot, but it was obvious with all the bigotry that I was spewing across to the school administrators. They should have called me a bigot, but they didn't. Ooh, yes, you even recognize you're being bigoted towards children. You recognize that, and you're just happy you weren't called it. Yeah, those labels matter, don't they? It matters if someone calls you the wrong label. If you're called a bigot and you don't think you're a bigot, that matters to you. And that's not even who you are. That's just your behavior. You're behaving as a label. And you want to deny a child the label of who they are. That's cruel, dude.
Cast off.
Parents like the Thomases are increasingly finding themselves at odds with school officials if and when they question any of the gender rituals or the content that's publishing their kids. But that's not a surprise to Tiffany Justice, who together with tens of thousands of moms are working to empower parents to reclaim their rights.
Anytime a parent expresses any type of concern about anything related to this issue, they're being told that they're what? A bigot, that somehow they don't love and respect all children. I'll be the first one to tell you, my child does not need a sexual spirit guide. I birthed that child.
My child does not need a sexual spirit guide. Sure, I agree with that statement. I'm sure your child doesn't need a sexual spirit guide. Oh, by the way, Tiffany, we're not talking about sex. Why do you guys keep talking about sex? Goodness, how many times are you going to talk about sex? We're not talking about sex, y'all.
carried them, I've raised them, I breastfed them, I know them better than anyone else. That's what American parents are saying. I love my child, I accept them as who they are, but stop messing with my kids and putting ideas into their head because you went through something in your life and you're living.
Oh my God. I love that statement. I wish that statement could be played right back to that lady as she's dragging her children to church when they don't want to go. Let's listen to that again. That was pretty good.
I birthed that child. I carried them. I've raised them. I breastfed them. I know them better than anyone else.
Fair enough.
What American parents are saying. I love my child. I accept them as who they are. But stop messing with my kids and putting ideas into their head because you went through something. And
stop messing with my kids and putting ideas in their head. Since you went through things, Mr. Pastor with a collar on, or the person in front of the pulpit, or whoever the religious leader I'm taking my kids to. They're putting ideas in their head. But you don't want a school to put ideas into a child's head. You would rather it come from your religious leaders. That's scary, dude. Ma'am, whatever you're called, whatever title you prefer, I'll go along with that. Whatever.
Your life and you're living vicariously through kids.
At the root of the transgender movement and the ideology that undergirds it is, in fact, a denial of the material reality of biological sex. And that has...
Oh, goodness. Right back to the biological sex. If your body was a monolith, they might have a point. Your body is not a monolith. You don't have one system that controls your whole body. And guess what? That's what it means to be trans, is your sexual characteristics are not in line with your gender identity. That's it. Your gender identity is really not connected to your sexual characteristics. Not at all. Not at all, people. Think on it. You can get in a car accident today, God forbid. Thank you, Zeus. Zeus forbid that you get in a car accident and you're mutilated from the waist down. You no longer have sexual characteristics. You no longer have that sexual expression. Do you now turn in your gender identity card? Oh, sorry guys, I lost the only gauge I have to know my gender identity. And the only gauge I have to know my gender identity was between my legs, and now it's gone. Wow, that must be rough. You have to turn in your gender identity card or whatever, or I lost what I am because I don't match up with my sexual characteristics. Oh, this is why arguing with people who express these ignorant points of view is so frustrating at times, because they're missing the core thing of it. The core is there is not a barometer to measure your gender identity based off of your sex, your sexual orientation, or your sexual characteristics, whatever sex thing you want to bring up that you guys keep bringing up. I want to talk about gender. Quit talking about sex. Come on. It's not as fun. always arguing with this people about sex. Goodness, stop it, people. Stop with the sex. Goodness.
Amy Souza, who has a master's degree in depth psychology, deeply concerned. Formerly an education director at a small regional theater in Washington State, her graduate and postgraduate work focused on the creative imagination and eco-psychology as a basis for building embodied awareness. Amid an internet-fueled peer contagion, young, impressionable children, especially girls, are being presented with gender ideals that confuse and confound them. And the results are tragic.
What we see in this...
Especially girls, they're being hit so hard. Why have somebody protect the little girls? I'm curious, like, these people actually acknowledge that trans people exist. I hope they do. They do, right? Right? They gotta believe that there are humans who are actually transgender people. Right? You think? And I wonder, did they think, that it never happens to people when they were young, or they're never recognized when they're young? I don't know. Because how do they think? So let's say 1% of those children are going to be trans. How would you let them express it? How would you recognize that? Are they given an option for that? Or are they trying to make a playing field where transgender people do not exist, or there will be no place for them to exist? I don't know. Think about it.
Ideology of, quote, gender identities is ultimately an ideology of sex denialism. And when we look at the underlying values of those who want to sort of have unsexed, unmoored from their bodies identities, ultimately we're looking at a value set of disembodiment and dismemberment and dissociation and...
Whoa. So she's just saying that your mindset is disembodiment, disemboweled. Oh my goodness. What does she think about people who get rhinoplasty? They just disembowel themselves. They just, despite their face, they're going to cut their nose off. Oh, this is the worst thing ever. Oh my goodness, they're going to mutilate themselves. Oh no, don't bring in the Botox and mutilate yourself either, lady. She's talking about treatment as mutilation is what she's talking about. She was saying, if you decide to align your sexual characteristics with what's inside of you that doesn't align when you were at birth, and you try to change that, then you are... It's just mutilation. It's just mutilation. I'm not going to talk about surgeries or treatments. It's mutilation. Well, guess what? For lots and lots of transgender people, not all, there are transgender people who never have a surgery ever, and they're still trans. For lots of trans people, surgery is a form of treatment, and it works very well. Treating gender dysphoria through surgery has better results than treating knee problems through surgery. Better results than treating back problems through surgery. Better results than just about any other surgery. The regret levels are so low. Look it up. If you want to say transgender people mutilate themselves and then they regret it and it's the worst thing ever, look at your facts there. The vast majority of transgender people who have surgeries as treatment are successful with that treatment. They are happier that they had that treatment. That is worth it for most of us. It is not a mutation. It is augmenting and reshaping an image, an expression to more closely align with my inner identity. And that's what it is. Quit calling my expression a mutation. F you for that. I'm not mutating myself. Goodness. I'm using surgical treatments that have a high success rate for treating gender dysphoria. How dare you use this mutation language on my treatment?
And dismemberment and dissociation and cognitive dissonance and objectification and commodification of bodies. So these things...
You're the one objectifying my body, and you're not allowing me to have a choice about it. So, objectifying bodies. Y'all the ones that are objectifying the body and saying the body dictates the inside, and you should form the inside to the outside, and you got it completely backwards. That's not what it is about to express yourself as trans. It's not changing your inside. It's changing the outside expression, because that's the only thing you can change. You cannot change that inner identity. You can discover it and recognize it is what you can do. And you can try to express what's inside of you. It's not mutilation. It is not objectifying. It is treatment for humans.
Are antithetical to being embodied, being fully embodied. And the thing is, to have safeguarding, in order to have bodily autonomy and safeguarding and boundaries around your body, you need to know the difference between bodies.
Yes.
And so what we are...
Yes, I agree with you. Mind your own body. You have bodily autonomy. I have bodily autonomy. We value bodily autonomy in this country. Allow us to have a freedom of bodily autonomy.
Seeing happening in schools with the curriculum and also with how locker rooms and bathrooms and changing rooms are being designated. We are seeing a real a failure of safeguarding and a failure of boundary setting, because these kids are being taught, first of all, that they can feel like a boy or feel like a girl.
I would love to ask that lady when she was a little kid, when she was a little girl, because we're gonna make the assumption she's cis, right? Because that would be totally weird if she was a trans woman. And being again, that would, yeah, whatever. So when she was a little girl, say at 8 or 6 years old, and you came up to her and go, "Hey, little child, do you feel like a boy or do you feel like a girl?" Was she supposed to go, "I don't know how to feel, get away from me, children don't feel"? I'm guaranteed she would have an answer, right? Do you feel like a boy? Maybe. Oh wait, now I'm thinking about something. Maybe she's scared of that question. Maybe that question frightens her. Maybe. Why should that question frighten anyone? Shouldn't that be an easy question? I mean, I would have thought so, but I never asked it to myself until I finally asked it of myself and going, holy shit! I feel like feminine. I'm feminine. I feel it. Is she scared to ask the question? Trust me, I didn't ask it until I was in my 40s. I'm right there with you. It's a scary question if you happen to be trans, but 99% of our population is not trans, and it's a very easy question if you're not trans. You ask the little kid, "Do you feel like a boy or a girl?" And little Johnny's like, "I feel like a boy." And little Janie, or whatever her name is, "I feel like a girl." Yay! Kids have feelings. But they better not have the feelings that you don't want them to have, right? Those feelings are dangerous if they don't align with your predetermined mold of that child, right, lady?
You probably know, Amy, the statistics are showing that the most vulnerable groups, the most predominant demographic who are now experiencing what they're calling gender dysphoria, this severe incongruence with one's biological sex, are teenage girls and young women.
It's not about the sex. It's not incongruent with your biological sex. That's not what it is. It's a misalignment between your expression and your identity. That's what it is. Come on, people.
Who we know are vulnerable to social contagions. This is explored more fully in Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage. Could you explain why this is so bad? Again, we know it's bad for boys and girls, but why is this particularly destructive for young girls, especially if they're struggling already?
So when you are in a disembodied state, you are kind of a vacant house. And the metaphor of the vacant house goes a little something like this. If there is a vacant house on at the end of the block,
and it might have a giant, massive barbed wire fence around it. And yet you are going to see that kids are going to break in and hold their parties there. Drug dealers are going to break in and hold their business there. You know, kids are going to throw bottles through the window. People are going to litter over the yard, because despite the massive barrier, everyone can see that the house, it's a vacant house. Contrast that with, you know, a house.
In your imagination, kids are just doing all kinds of crazy stuff all the time, right? Oh goodness, there's a cat away. All of us mice are going to go play. I think that speaks a lot more to the parenting skills than anything. If your parenting skills are like, hey, child, as long as if you know for sure no one's in that house, you can go destroy wherever the hell you want in that house and tell your friends. What? No, you raise children to respect property that's not yours. That is not your, even respect your property. Respect people's property. Respect people's things and respect people. It's not that hard. You're saying because there might be a scenario where a bunch of people who are not respecting it won't respect it. That's what I'm hearing.
On the other side of the block, that, you know, the grass is mowed, the lights are on, there's curtains in the window, there's flowers in the planter box. This house doesn't have a fence at all.
Well, those hoodlums who stop being over there with the barbed wire, they're going to hurt themselves. Those hoodlums can go over in the nice yard, right? What's stopping the hoodlums from going into the nice yard? Is it their morals of not damaging property? You already set them up as property damagers. You're trying to split hairs here. You're going, if I look pretty enough and clean enough, I am not going to be violated. If I look like a trash bag, then I'm going to be violated. Guess what? The problem is the violators. Not how you look, not how you behave. It's violations. Quit trying to push atrocities on people onto a minority group who doesn't control those atrocities. The control is with the perpetrator, not the victim. So, well, okay, let's go back to this victim blaming thing again. Here we go.
And yet no one violates it, because everyone can see that someone is managing and caring for the house. It's fully occupied. So we're putting kids, and especially girls, in a state of dissociation and disembodiment, and we are ultimately setting them up to be like this vacant house where they might put up a lot of barriers. But
why is it just a girl that can be a vacant house? Why can't a boy be a vacant house? And what the hell does it mean to be a vacant house as a child anyway? I don't even get your analogy. But whatever, let's continue.
They don't have, you know, this sense of internal authority.
I still don't get her analogy. What is she on about? If you have barbed wire and no grass in your house, you have no eternal authority? So she's trying to put it on the girl. Just say the girl is the empty house and she doesn't take care of herself because of whatever reasons. And therefore, people are going to violate her? Whatever.
A cultural clash over so-called gender identity policies. Parents are learning that the ideological instruction in the schools are part of a much larger operation, and the classroom is one of the first places in the pipeline toward gender clinics, where counselors and doctors are carrying out experimental medicalization on young people, many of whom are on the autism spectrum or are dealing with other significant mental health challenges.
Yo, those are some big accusations right there. And now they're going to take your children and they're going to do medical experiments behind your back. When you least suspect it, you're sending your child off to school and they're going to grab them up and they're going to do medical experiments on them and mwahaha. Then we're going to put them in an oven and cook them like little morsels. Come here, Hansel and Gretel. Come to school, Hansel and Gretel. We got something for you. Yes, come snack over here at the school. We got plenty of treats. Ha ha ha. Can't wait to throw them in the oven. Is this what's going through these people's mind, Hansel and freaking Gretel, when you go to school? That your children are going to be kidnapped and medically experimented on? What the hell? What the hell?
Though the statutes and legal age of consent vary state by state, one of the most pervasive myths often perpetuated here is that administering chemical puberty blockers to psychologically distressed children is a completely safe and reversible practice, or that there are no lasting harms. But in most cases, what often follows blockers are synthetic opposite-sex hormones.
What often follows. We had this discussion earlier, didn't we? I said that is probably the most intrusive, would be slowing down or blocking an unwanted puberty. If you love your child and you want to support your child, you want your child to express who they are, do you want them to go through a puberty that is unwanted? That's what it is. And they said, following, you can get opposite, what did they say, opposite sex or something. Well, you're going to get a puberty and a hormones, because that's what literally happened. When I did my hormone replacement therapy, I went through a second puberty. As a teenager, I went through a masculine-driven puberty or androgen-driven puberty. In my 40s, through a hormone replacement therapy, which your child's not going to be getting it. They're going to have to be 18 or really looked at with a bunch of experts and parents involved and everything of they're at least 16 to get a hormone replacement therapy. I can see blocking, but replacement therapy, ooh, that's not for young children. No. Later they get the hormone replacement therapy. You slow down and block it, and later as adults they go, oh, now I want to experience the puberty that I need to experience. That is what they're talking about. In every step of this supporting the child to express itself, these people are trying to bash it down. They're trying to say, no, that's a bad thing. No, that's a bad thing. No support. No expression. Not for you and not for anyone else like you. That's what's being told here.
And some then opt for a medically unnecessary cosmetic gender surgery. But as Tiffany notes, story after story shows the dire realities that must be confronted.
This idea that somehow this isn't going to have long-term negative effects for the child is wrong. It's a lie. And when you listen and read the stories of people that have gone through this process, that have had their breasts removed, my goodness, what 11, 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl can be making that decision to have their breasts removed.
Totally agree. All those 11-year-old girls, just chop them off. What are you talking about? 11 and 12 and 13-year-old children should not be having top surgery. Agreed. They should also be in a place where they don't have to think about the top surgery a little bit later. So you can slow down or stop the unwanted puberty. And that prevents the unwanted surgeries. Get it? It's not that hard to get. If you are a child and you're about to experience a puberty that's going to transform your body in ways that are not going to align with your inner identity, that might be something you want to stop or slow down. That's what puberty blockers are. That's what puberty blockers are, people. They can experience a puberty that they want to. You know, say you're a young person, you're about to experience an estrogen-driven puberty, and that's not going to be for you. You don't want that. So choices there. Supporting parents could say, let's block this. Let's slow this down a little bit later. We're going to introduce, as a young adult, you can introduce hormones that are going to give you that puberty that your body will feel more comfortable in. You will feel more comfortable in. It will be more you. So, what do you want with that child? You want them to go through an unwanted puberty, grow tissues that they are not going to be comfortable having, and then later, not only are they going to still go through the blockers and the hormone replacement therapy as adult, but now they have to go through an another treatment of removing the unwanted parts that they don't want, that doesn't fit them. So you're creating stress and extra surgeries. Why? All you have to do is slow down or stop an unwanted puberty, and you'll prevent a lot of these surgeries. You'll probably prevent facial feminization surgery if the child is not wanting to experience a masculine or an androgen-driven puberty, because that androgen-driven puberty is going to start shaping the bones in your face in ways you don't really probably want if your inner identity does not align with that. Okay, folks, I think we are going to stop for today. We still have more to go with the premiere episode. I think we have maybe a parent or two still to listen to. Let's see. We still have a good 9 to 10 minutes with this podcast, but we're going to stop for now, and next week we will have another look at what is it called again? Generation Indoctrination, the Transgender Battle, from the Christian Post, brought to you by some dude named Brandon Showwater, a journalist from the Christian Post. So yeah. Okay. I will see you all soon. So, love yourself, but more importantly, like yourself, and treat people the way they want to be treated. Thank you, and bye-bye.